You know that feeling when you walk into a room and immediately sense something's off? That was me walking into what I thought would be just another regular Sunday dinner at my parents' house. I had no idea I was about to be ambushed with a marriage proposal to a man I barely knew. My name's Zara. And I've been dating Logan for almost 2 years now. We met at our friend Andre's monthly game night, one of those casual hangouts where everyone brings snacks from the dollar store and spends hours playing board games and just enjoying life. Logan's kind, supportive, and we've been building a future together, piece by piece, on our modest budgets and big dreams. My parents are traditional, but not in the wealthy country club kind of way. Dad works overtime at his company, pulling long hours to keep us afloat. Mom stretches every dollar at the grocery store, clipping coupons and hunting sales like it's her job. They've always had this family comes first mentality, which usually translates to whatever Dad says goes. No questions asked. Logan and I have been keeping our relationship low-key around my family, not exactly hiding it, but not making a big production either. He comes to some family events, brings flowers to my mom, which she aggressively puts in the kitchen instead of the living room where guests would see them. He tries his best to talk sports with my dad, who usually just grunts in response before turning back to the TV. So yesterday, I showed up for our regular Sunday dinner. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Mom was making her famous pot roast, the one she stretches to last the whole week. Dad was planted in his usual spot watching TV. My sister Vera was texting on the couch, scrolling mindlessly through her phone. Then I noticed it. Extra places set at the table. Who else is coming? I asked Mom while helping her toss the salad, trying to keep my voice casual. Oh, Warren and Dexter are joining us, she said, not meeting my eyes as she fussed with the silverware. Warren has been Dad's best friend since high school. They work together and have been practically joined at the hip for decades. I barely know his son Dexter, except that he's 27 and works with them too. We've maybe exchanged 10 words total over the years at various gatherings. The dinner started normally enough. Warren arrived with Dexter, who was wearing a button-up shirt that still had the creases from the store packaging. My mom kept serving him the best pieces of meat, the tender center cuts she usually saves for Dad, while giving me these weird, meaningful looks across the table. Vera kept kicking me under the table and widening her eyes like she was trying to send me Morse code or something. Then, between the pot roast and Mom's box mix brownies, my dad cleared his throat in that way that makes everyone stop chewing. Zara, Warren and I have been talking. I was already getting that weird feeling in my stomach. You know the one. That sinking sensation when you just know something bad is coming and there's nothing you can do to stop it. Dexter here is ready to settle down. Warren jumped in, beaming like he was announcing a lottery win instead of talking about his grown son like a business transaction. And we thought, what better match than our two families coming together? My dad finished, looking pleased with himself. I nearly choked on my water. What? It makes sense. My dad continued, not even bothering to look at me as he cut another piece of meat. Warren and I are expanding the business. Dexter's going to take over his father's part eventually. You two would make a good match. I was sitting there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, while Dexter stared at his plate looking about as comfortable as someone sitting on hot coals. The brownie in my mouth turned to sawdust. I'm dating Logan, I said, stating what everyone at this table already knew. My mom waved her hand dismissively like she was swatting away a fly. Oh, honey, that's just a young girl's fancy. We're talking about your future here. Your mother's right, Dad added, his voice getting that firm edge that used to make me and Vera straighten up when we were kids. Logan's a nice enough kid, but he's not going anywhere. Dexter here has a real future in the business. I looked at Dexter, who was still utterly fascinated by his brownie. He hadn't said a single word this entire time. Warren was grinning like he'd just solved world hunger, and my parents were looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to fall in line like I always had. This is insane, I said, my voice shaking. I'm not marrying Dexter. I love Logan. My dad's face did that thing where it turns slightly purple, the vein in his forehead starting to pulse. This isn't about love, Zara. This is about family and future. The words hung in the air like a threat. As I grabbed my crossbody bag and headed for the door, I heard my dad's final words cutting through the awkward silence. You have until the end of the month to end things with that boy. We're announcing the engagement at Warren's birthday party. I didn't say anything else. I just left. Logan was already waiting in his car around the corner. We'd planned to go to Walmart after dinner to buy some stuff for his apartment. I got in the car, hands shaking so badly I could barely buckle my seatbelt. That was yesterday. Today, my phone's been blowing up with messages from my mom about being reasonable and thinking about the family. Vera sent me a string of confused texts followed by warnings that Dad's serious about this. Even my cousin Ophelia called to ask if the rumors were true. Logan and I stayed up late last night in his tiny studio apartment, talking in circles about what to do. We've actually been planning to move in together when his lease is up next month. Nothing fancy. Just a small 2-bedroom in the same complex where his friend Andre lives. We've been quietly saving up, keeping our plans under wraps until everything was settled. Now I'm wondering if we need to speed everything up. I've muted most of my family on my phone, but I can still see the message count growing like a ticking time bomb. The only one I've responded to is Vera, who's sworn not to tell anyone that I'm staying at Logan's tonight. I love my family, but this is crazy, right? Like, it's 2024, not 1824. Who even does arranged marriages anymore? Especially over something as mundane as a struggling business partnership. Logan's being supportive but says it's my decision to make, and I've already made it. I'm not marrying Dexter, no matter what kind of future my dad thinks it'll give me, but I have no idea what comes next. Thank you all for the overwhelming support on my last post. It's been 2 weeks since that surreal Sunday dinner, and I'm writing this from Logan's couch at 1 in the morning. Stress eating dollar store cookies and trying to process how everything spiraled so quickly. Our water heater just broke, and the landlord isn't responding to texts. So this seems like the perfect time to update you all while waiting for the kettle to heat water, so I can at least wash my face in the sink. The day after my last post, I waited until my parents would be at work and went back home to grab some essentials. I thought I'd be in and out in 15 minutes. But Vera was homesick from her community college classes. Between shoving clothes into my duffel bag, she filled me in on what I'd missed. And let me tell you, the truth is way messier than I thought. Turns out, this whole arranged marriage situation isn't just some random traditional values thing. It's about money. Warren's business is struggling badly. My dad's been stressed about money too, which explains the kitchen faucet that's been dripping for months and the way Mom's been buying even more generic brands than usual. This arranged marriage wasn't about family, tradition, or values, or any of that nonsense they tried to sell me. It's about combining the businesses and using my dad's contracts to keep Warren's company from going under. Real romantic, right? But things got even more complicated when Vera showed me something on Mom's phone. My parents had already put down a non-refundable deposit on a wedding venue. They'd booked it for Warren's birthday party, but apparently signed the contract as an engagement. Celebration. My mom's been showing the contract to everyone as proof that I can't back out now. The venue is some fancy converted barn that probably costs more than I make in 3 months. And just like that, I realized I wasn't just dealing with old-fashioned parents. I was dealing with people who'd already spent money they couldn't afford to lose, banking on me falling in line like I always had. The real question now is, what was I going to do about it? Have you ever walked into what you thought was a normal family dinner, only to discover your entire life had been planned out without you? That's exactly what happened to me. And let me tell you, the pot roast wasn't the only thing that left a bad taste in my mouth that night. My name's Zara, and I've been dating Logan for almost 2 years now. We met at our friend Andre's monthly game night, one of those casual hangouts where everyone brings snacks from the dollar store and spends hours playing board games and just being ourselves. Logan's kind, supportive, and we've been quietly building a future together, piece by piece, on our modest budgets and big dreams. My parents are traditional, but not in the country club, summer vacation kind of way. Dad works overtime at his company, pulling long shifts to keep us afloat. Mom stretches every dollar at the grocery store like it's an Olympic sport. They've always had this family comes first mentality, which in our house basically translates to whatever Dad says goes. No questions asked, no arguments allowed. Logan and I have been keeping our relationship low-key around my family, not hiding it exactly, but not making a big production either. He comes to some family events, brings flowers to my mom, which she always puts in the kitchen instead of the living room where guests would actually see them. He tries his best to talk sports with my dad, who usually just grunts in response before turning back to the TV. So yesterday, I showed up for our regular Sunday dinner. Everything seemed perfectly normal at first. Mom was making her famous pot roast, the one she magically stretches to last the whole week. Dad was planted in his usual spot in front of the TV. My sister Vera was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Then I noticed something. Extra places set at the table. Who else is coming? I asked Mom while helping her toss the salad, trying to keep my voice casual even though alarm bells were already going off in my head. Oh, Warren and Dexter are joining us. she said, not meeting my eyes as she fussed with the silverware for way too long. Warren is Dad's best friend since high school. They work together and have been practically joined at the hip for decades. I barely know his son Dexter, except that he's 27 and works with them too. We've maybe exchanged 10 words total over the years at various family gatherings. The dinner started normally enough. Warren arrived with Dexter, who was wearing a button-up shirt that still had those crisp creases from the store packaging. My mom kept serving him the best pieces of meat, the tender center cuts she usually saves for Dad, while giving me these weird, meaningful looks across the table. Vera kept kicking me under the table and widening her eyes like she was trying to send me Morse code. Then, right between the pot roast and Mom's box mixed brownies, my dad cleared his throat in that way that makes everyone freeze. Zara, Warren and I have been talking. That sinking feeling hit my stomach immediately. You know the one. When you just know something bad is coming, and there's absolutely nothing you can do to stop it. Dexter here is ready to settle down. Warren jumped in, beaming like he was announcing a lottery win instead of talking about his grown son like a business transaction. And we thought, what better match than our two families coming together? My dad finished, looking genuinely pleased with himself. I nearly choked on my water. It makes sense, my dad continued, not even bothering to look at me as he methodically cut another piece of meat. Warren and I are expanding the business. Dexter's going to take over his father's part eventually. You two would make a good match. I sat there, fork frozen halfway to my mouth, while Dexter stared at his plate looking about as comfortable as someone sitting on hot coals. He hadn't said a single word. The brownie in my mouth turned to complete sawdust. I'm dating Logan, I said, stating what everyone at this table already knew. My mom waved her hand dismissively like she was swatting away an annoying fly. Oh, honey, that's just a young girl's fancy. We're talking about your real future here. Your mother's right, Dad added, his voice getting that firm edge that used to make me and Vera straighten up instantly when we were kids. Logan's a nice enough kid, but he's not going anywhere. Dexter here has a real future in the business. I looked at Dexter, who was still utterly fascinated by his brownie. Warren was grinning like he'd just solved world hunger. And my parents were looking at me expectantly, waiting for me to fall in line like I always had before. This is insane, I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. I'm not marrying Dexter. I love Logan. My dad's face did that thing where it turned slightly purple, the vein in his forehead starting to pulse visibly. This isn't about love, Zara. This is about family and future. As I grabbed my crossbody bag and headed for the door, I heard my dad's final words cutting through the thick, awkward silence like a knife. You have until the end of the month to end things with that boy. We're announcing the engagement at Warren's birthday party. I didn't say anything else. I just left the door clicking shut behind me with a finality that seemed to echo in my chest. Logan was already waiting in his car around the corner, just like we'd planned. We were supposed to go to Walmart after dinner to buy some stuff for his apartment. I got in the car, hands shaking so badly I could barely buckle my seatbelt. That was yesterday. Today, my phone's been absolutely blowing up with messages from my mom about being reasonable and thinking about the family. Vera sent me a frantic string of confused texts, followed by warnings that Dad's dead serious about this whole thing. Even my cousin Ophelia called to ask if the rumors swirling around the family were actually true. Logan and I stayed up late last night in his tiny studio apartment, talking in circles about what we should do. The truth is, we've actually been planning to move in together when his lease is up next month. Nothing fancy, just a small 2-bedroom in the same complex where his friend Andre lives. We've been quietly saving up, keeping our plans under wraps until everything was ready and settled. Now I'm wondering if we need to speed everything up drastically. I've muted most of my family on my phone, but I can still see the message count growing like a ticking time bomb. The only one I've actually responded to is Vera, who's sworn on everything not to tell anyone that I'm currently staying at Logan's tonight. I love my family, I really do. But this is absolutely crazy, right? Like, it's 2024, not 1824. Who even does arranged marriages anymore? Especially over something as cold and calculating as a struggling business partnership. Logan's being incredibly supportive, but says it's ultimately my decision to make. And I've already made it. I'm not marrying Dexter, no matter what kind of future my dad thinks it'll give me or the family. But I have absolutely no idea what comes next. My cousin Ophelia dropped by Logan's place the next day with some winter clothes she'd borrowed from me months ago. While we awkwardly stood in the tiny apartment, she shared that my mom's been calling literally everyone in the family, crying hysterically about how I'm throwing my entire life away. The family gossip mill is working overtime. Apparently. And here's the kicker. Ophelia casually mentioned that Dexter, my supposed perfect match, still lives in his parents' basement and spends most of his time playing. What a catch I'm missing out on, right? Work hasn't been much better either. My manager coincidentally cut my hours right after my mom called the store crying about her troubled, rebellious daughter. I'm now scrambling desperately to pick up shift swaps just to make rent. Logan's dealing with his own issues too. His car completely failed inspection, and the repairs would cost more than the car's actually worth. Our living situation is becoming increasingly challenging. Logan's studio apartment wasn't meant for two people. We're constantly stepping over each other, bumping into furniture, and his downstairs neighbor keeps complaining to the landlord about extra noise. The bathroom sink is currently holding my entire skincare routine because there's literally nowhere else to put it. Last night, I found my mascara in the kitchen cupboard next to the ramen noodles. That's the level of organization we're working with here. The financial strain is getting painfully real. Between my reduced hours at work and all these unexpected expenses that keep popping up, who knew moving would require so many random purchases? We're both feeling the squeeze hard. I've started desperately selling clothes on Poshmark just to build up some savings. Logan's been picking up odd jobs on TaskRabbit, but it's barely covering the basics. We've become absolute experts at stretching groceries. Rice and beans have become our closest friends. The situation hit a devastating new low when I ran into my parents at Walmart while discount shopping. What followed was a scene straight out of a bad daytime drama. Tears in the cereal aisle, loud accusations about family loyalty and betrayal, and vague threats about Warren being forced to sell to some big corporation. We just grabbed our essentials and practically ran. But not before Mom noticed all the generic brand items in our cart and started crying. Even harder about how I deserve so much better than this pathetic life. Today's fresh hell involved discovering that my parents had apparently been saving for my wedding since I was literally born. Mom sent photos of the wedding fund passbook, a not-so-subtle reminder of exactly what I'm throwing away. The guilt trip came complete with a side of childhood photos and a screenshot of current wedding venue prices, just to twist the knife a little deeper to make matters infinitely worse. Our planned apartment fell through at the last minute. The landlord decided to rent to his nephew instead, leaving us completely stranded. Logan's lease expires in just 2 weeks, and finding an affordable place is proving harder than we ever expected. His friend Andre offered us his spare room temporarily, but accepting feels like admitting complete defeat, especially since Andre lives in his parents' garage conversion and his mom still does his laundry. Logan's been incredibly supportive through all of this, but I can tell it's wearing on him too. Yesterday, I found him just staring at packages of ramen with this utterly defeated look on his face that honestly broke my heart a little. The extended family's involvement is absolutely the worst part. My phone's constantly buzzing with messages from relatives I barely even see. All suddenly, experts on why I'm making a catastrophic mistake. Vera keeps me secretly updated on the home front. Apparently, Dad's now talking about writing me out of his will entirely, which would be way more threatening if there was actually anything to inherit. But you know what? When I catch myself wavering, questioning everything, I look at Logan. Maybe he's playing Wordle on his phone, or doing that thing where he hums while washing dishes. And I know deep in my soul I can't give in. We're not some business merger, not assets to be traded. This is our lives. Even if right now those lives involve sharing a single bath towel because I forgot to grab mine during what I'm calling the Great Escape. For now, we're taking it day by day. Apartment hunting during lunch breaks, blocking new numbers as they pop up, and trying to figure out our next move. At least we have each other. Even if our current date nights consist of comparing rental listings over microwave ramen, what I didn't know yet was that things were about to get a whole lot more complicated. And the truth behind my parents' desperate push for this marriage was darker than I ever could have imagined. Some of you might remember me from my previous posts about my parents trying to force an arranged marriage with my dad's best friend's son, Dexter. Well, a lot has happened in the past week, and I'm writing this from a $45 a night motel room while eating leftover pizza and still wearing my $30 Amazon dress. It wasn't exactly the wedding I dreamed about as a kid, but honestly, it was perfect in its own weird, chaotic way. The final decision to elope came after finding out my parents had actually started sending out pre-engagement party invitations to that fancy barn venue they'd booked without my permission. My sister Vera sent me a photo of the invitation, and they'd even picked out my future married name. Everything was already decided. That was absolutely the final straw. Logan and I had been talking about marriage anyway, especially since we'd been living together for the past few weeks. One night, while sharing a bowl of microwave mac and cheese and watching our neighbor's cat through the window, we've named her Princess, even though she's definitely not ours. We just looked at each other and knew. We planned it for a random Tuesday, not because it was special, but because we both miraculously managed to get the day off work and the courthouse had an opening. Andre, Logan's friend, agreed to be our witness. I bought a simple white dress from Amazon that honestly looked way better in the photos. And Logan wore his one good button-down shirt, the one without any obvious wrinkles. The morning of everything that could possibly go wrong, the zipper on my dress got stuck. Logan's car made that horrible grinding noise again and wouldn't start. We had to take an Uber to the courthouse, splitting the fare 3 ways with Andre because we're all completely broke. The driver kept asking why we were dressed up, and we just kept saying we had a court appointment. Technically true, right? The ceremony itself took maybe 10 minutes tops. The clerk was literally eating her lunch while processing our paperwork. And there was a guy in the corner frantically filling out jury duty forms. Not exactly romantic, but we couldn't stop grinning like complete idiots. Andre took photos on his phone. Most of them are blurry disasters, but there's one good one where Logan and I are just looking at each other and laughing because I almost dropped the $12 ring we'd bought. We celebrated at the diner around the corner. Split a plate of fries and a milkshake because that's literally what was left in our wedding budget. Andre insisted on paying for his own coffee, saying it was his wedding gift to us. The waitress gave us free pie when she found out we'd just gotten married. First bit of wedding luck we'd had all day. Then came the hard part, telling people. We decided to do it through a simple Instagram post, just that one good photo Andre took with a casual caption that said, "So we did a thing." The first response was from Ophelia, just a string of heart emojis. Then Vera called, simultaneously laughing and crying. She was genuinely happy for us, but terrified about the fallout. Which, well, she was absolutely right to be worried. My mom saw the post while at the grocery store. I know this because she called me from the parking lot, sobbing so hysterically hard that the cart attendant apparently asked if she needed help. She kept saying things about how she'd never be able to show her face at church again. How could I do this to the family? What about the venue deposit? Dad's reaction came through Vera. Apparently, he threw his phone across the room when he saw the post. Warren immediately drove over to their house for an emergency meeting. But here's the plot twist. Dexter surprisingly liked our Instagram post and even commented congratulations, which probably didn't help the situation at all, but made me laugh. The extended family response has been a chaotic mix of shocked Facebook messages, angry texts, and a few quiet, secret congratulations. My cousin even tagged me in a TikTok about ungrateful children. Real mature. We're currently laying low in this motel because our apartment application is still processing and Logan's lease ended yesterday. The room smells like old cigarettes and stale air, and the Wi-Fi keeps cutting out randomly, but it's our first home as a married couple. We've been watching random YouTube videos on Logan's phone and ordering cheap takeout, making the absolute best of it. Money's still incredibly tight. We're both picking up extra shifts whenever we can, and I'm selling more stuff on pot. The apartment we applied for isn't fancy at all. It's a ground floor 1-bedroom with a weird layout and no dishwasher, but it would be ours. The leasing office said they'd let us know by Friday. Vera has been our main source of news from home. Mom's apparently already redecorated my old room, took down all my photos and everything, like I died. Dad's telling everyone at work that I'm going through a rebellious phase. Warren's wife keeps trying to arrange some kind of family meeting to fix everything. The strangest reaction came from Dexter himself. He sent me a DM saying he's actually relieved because now he can finally tell his dad about his girlfriend. Apparently, they've been dating for over a year, and she's a streamer and single mom. Warren would definitely not approve. Logan and I are taking it day by day. Sometimes I wake up absolutely panicking about everything we've done. But then Logan makes me laugh by trying to cook ramen in our motel room's coffee maker. And I remember exactly why I chose this. It's not perfect, but it's ours. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, the truth finally came out. Sometimes truth comes in the most unexpected ways. In my case, it came through a stack of water-damaged papers I found while helping Vera clean out our flooded basement after last week's storm. The basement incident happened when Vera called, panicking about water seeping in. Mom and Dad were at some church fundraiser, and she was freaking out. Logan and I drove over to help save what we could, while moving boxers to higher ground. I found Dad's old filing cabinet had tipped over, papers everywhere, mostly soaked and bleeding ink. As we were frantically sorting through what could be saved, I found something interesting. Loan documents. Lots of them. All with Warren's signature and my dad as guarantor. The dates went back years. Small loans at first, then progressively bigger ones. The most recent was from just before this whole arranged marriage mess started. Some had red final notice stamps. Others had payment schedules with missed check marks all down the page. And suddenly, everything made horrible, perfect sense. This wasn't about tradition or family values or building a future. This was about my dad being buried under Warren's debts, desperately trying to save both their businesses by merging the families. They weren't trying to give me a better life. They were trying to use me as collateral. It was like looking at a timeline of Warren's business slowly sinking. Debt by debt, bad decision by bad decision. My hands were shaking as I flipped through the water-damaged papers in my parents' flooded basement, each page revealing another layer of lies. But here's where it gets really weird. Mixed in with all the loan papers were printed emails between my dad and some big development company. They were interested in buying both businesses, Dad's and Warren's, but only if they came as a complete package deal. The offer was actually decent enough to clear all the debts and then some. My heart actually lifted for a second reading those numbers. But then I saw the catch. They wanted proof of stable succession planning. Basically, they weren't buying unless they had guarantees that the businesses would stay together long term, that there would be continuity, stability, a future. And that's where Dexter and I came in. The perfect solution. A marriage would show the development company that these businesses would be family-run for years to come, tied together by blood and vows. We were never people to them. We were just pieces on a chessboard, moved around to save a sinking ship. While we were still processing this gut punch of information, Vera found even more papers in a different box. Turns out Warren had been hiding exactly how bad things were from everyone, including his own wife. He'd mortgaged their house twice without telling her. Twice? My dad had co-signed everything, probably thinking Warren would somehow turn things around eventually, that his best friend since high school wouldn't let him down. The real kicker? A draft contract dated just before the whole marriage proposal dinner. Warren had already started secretly selling off equipment just to cover basic payments. My dad was about to lose everything he'd spent 20 years building, all because he'd trusted his best friend. I took photos of everything before the water could destroy the evidence completely. Then I sent them to Dexter he deserved to know what his father had done, what they'd all been planning to do to us. His response was just, well, that explains the rush. Apparently, his dad had been pushing him to settle down for months before that awful dinner. He'd even tried multiple times to break him up with his girlfriend, making up excuses about why she wasn't suitable. The next day, Ophelia came over to our apartment bringing housewarming ramen, because that's our thing now. She had more tea to spill. Warren's wife had found out about the second mortgage and immediately moved in with her sister. Dexter had finally told everyone about his girlfriend and her kid, and he'd moved in with them. Warren was supposedly staying with his brother to give his wife space, but probably because she'd actually changed the locks. Dad still wouldn't talk to me directly, but he'd started asking Vera these weird, roundabout questions about my new place. If I was eating enough, if we were okay, that kind of thing. Mom had switched from angry Facebook posts to sharing those missing my daughter memes, which I guess was progress in some twisted way. Yesterday, I got a text from Warren. Just 2 words. I'm sorry. I haven't responded yet. I'm not sure I will. I'm not sure what I'd even say. Logan's been absolutely amazing through all of this chaos. He doesn't say much about the drama, just holds me when I need it and makes terrible jokes when I get too serious. Last night, he tried to lighten the mood by suggesting we could start our own business, but like something simple. Maybe selling those little hats for cats online. I actually laughed until I cried. We're doing okay, considering everything. The apartment's slowly coming together. We found a real bed frame on Facebook Marketplace yesterday. Slightly scratched but solid. Our upstairs neighbor's kid practices trumpet at 7 in the morning every single day. But we're getting used to it. I'm picking up extra shifts at work, and Logan started doing food delivery on weekends. It's not glamorous at all, but the bills are getting paid. Vera says Dad's been spending a lot of time in his garage lately, probably trying to figure out what to do next, how to salvage what's left. The development company pulled their offer completely when the merger fell through. She overheard Mom telling her friend on the phone that they might have to sell the house, the one they've lived in since before I was even born. Part of me feels guilty, even though I know logically none of this is really my fault. Another part is just angry that they even tried to use my entire life to fix their business problems. Mostly, though, I'm just tired of the whole thing. But you know what? We're free, and that's worth everything. I wasn't planning on posting again, but I just had the most surreal Thanksgiving experience, and I thought you all might want to know how things finally turned out after the whole arranged marriage drama. First off, Logan and I are still in our tiny apartment. We finally got a real bed frame, so goodbye forever to that awful air mattress. The neighbor kid has moved on from trumpet to drums now, which is somehow both worse and better at the same time. The upside is we found out our other neighbor works at a furniture outlet, so we got a slightly damaged couch for practically nothing. It has this weird stain that kind of looks like Danny DeVito if you squint, but honestly, it's comfortable. The biggest change happened about 2 months ago. Mom started sending these weird thinking of you texts, usually late at night when she was watching those crying videos on Facebook that make middle-aged women emotional. Then one day, she asked if we could meet for coffee. I agreed, mostly because I was completely tired of dodging her at the grocery store, like we were in some kind of spy movie. We met at that same diner where Logan and I had our wedding reception. She cried into her coffee. I awkwardly stirred my tea, and somehow, we ended up having an actual real conversation for the first time in months. Turns out, Dad's business survived, barely. They had to downsize significantly, sell some equipment, and move to a much smaller office. But they're managing to stay afloat. Warren's company wasn't so lucky. Speaking of Warren, he and his wife are officially separated now. She got the house in the end. Remember those secret mortgages? He's still living with his brother, who apparently has started charging him rent. Karma's funny that way sometimes. Dexter's doing surprisingly well, actually. He moved in with his girlfriend and her kid, started streaming on Twitch himself, and actually makes decent money doing it. His mom told my mom he seems happier than he's been in years. He and Logan even game together sometimes now, which is weird but kinda nice. Dad took way longer to come around. The breakthrough came when our car broke down again. Seriously, this thing is held together by hope and duct tape at this point. Logan was trying to fix it in the apartment parking lot when Dad just randomly showed up. Vera had casually mentioned it to Mom, who mentioned it to Dad, and well, he didn't say much, just grabbed some tools and started helping with the car. Now, they have this weird thing where they text each other car maintenance videos. Dad still barely talks to me directly, but he'll send Logan links to auto parts on sale. Baby steps, I guess. I'll take what I can get. Thanksgiving was the real test. Mom had been hinting for weeks that we should come. I was incredibly hesitant, but Logan pointed out that free food is free food, and we're still on a pretty tight budget. So we went. It was awkward. So awkward. Aunt Alice kept making these pointed comments about unconventional life choices. Uncle Bob pretended we weren't even there. But Vera and Ophelia ran interference like absolute champs. And Mom actually put our wedding photo on the mantle, right next to that horrible school picture of me from 7th grade with the braces and butterfly clips. The surprise guest was Warren's ex-wife. Apparently she and Mom are still friends. She brought this amazing sweet potato casserole and spent most of dinner telling everyone about her journey of self-discovery and her new hobby of painting. Dad looked like he wanted to completely disappear into his mashed potatoes. The real highlight was when cousin Andre, not Logan's friend Andre, different person, keep up, announced his engagement. Everyone immediately started planning this huge, elaborate wedding, talking excitedly about venues and flowers and all that stuff. Mom caught my eye across the table and actually winked at me. Real progress. Our apartment is still small, but we've made it home. The cheap ring finally turned my finger green, but I kind of like it. It matches our aesthetic. Logan's car is still making that horrible grinding noise, but we're saving up for a newer one. Slowly, very slowly. Work is work. Nothing exciting, but stable. We're both getting by. Logan started taking some online courses in computer stuff. I'm thinking about doing the same, but for now, I'm just trying to pick up extra shifts when I can. Vera comes over a lot, usually with food from Mom. I think she's Mom's spy sometimes, reporting back about whether our apartment is clean or if we're actually eating vegetables. But she also brings the best gossip, like how Warren's trying to start over with some consulting gig, or how Dexter's girlfriend's kid now calls him Papa D, which makes me smile every time I hear it. Things aren't perfect. They're messy and complicated, and sometimes I still get angry about what they tried to do. But we're building something real here, something that's actually ours. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing.